When we began Rappler, there was a reason why we wanted to do it, because our institutions, unlike here in Canada, our institutions were weak. And I was tired of waiting for government to do something about it. And I thought that this new technology, that Facebook, that Twitter, could actually help us build institutions bottom up, that we could use technology to jumpstart development. And we were able to do it.
And can you give people a sense of the risks we're talking about? For you as a journalist, it's not an insignificant thing to be facing arrest warrants in the Philippines right now.
First, thank you for summarizing. It was great to hear it, and it's also quite an honor to be here with you today and to be with Andrea in Toronto, because she spent some time in Manila with us at the beginning of all of this, when everything was starting. So I've been a journalist my entire life. We've done nothing but tell the story, but for doing that now, I have at least 5 live cases where arrest warrants have been issued. I've posted bail on all 5. I have to monitor at least 5 other cases that are already ongoing. It just means that Little Rappler, which is a startup of about 100 people, I came from managing 1,000 people in the largest news group in the Philippines. Little Rappler now has to pay a lot of legal fees.
So what are you actually accused of doing? It sounds like you're a pretty serious criminal from the sounds of that.
Okay, I've already run out of synonyms for ridiculous for every single case that we've faced, but the more ridiculous they are, the easier to deal with, right? One is a cyber libel case, for example, that where the charge is before the law was created. So another one is, this is the tax evasion charge. One event that is on top of whether or not we're controlled by foreigners, that's the mother case, but the tax evasion charge reclassifies Rappler from a news group to a stock brokerage agency. We're not. I don't sell stocks. I'm a journalist, right? And then the mother case is very Putin-esque. It essentially alleges that Rappler is controlled by foreigners, and the assumption, and this is President Duterte, our president, announcing it in his State of the Nation address, that the assumption there is that we're out to take down the government. We're not. We're just trying to do our jobs.
And these cases, I don't want to inject a notion of fear here, but they carry a potential prison term of
15 years.
15 years.
So the worst one is up to 15 years. I'm older than I look, so 15 years. The tax evasion charges are 10 years. I don't quite know how to deal with that yet.
No, are you frightened at all?
Frightened isn't the right word. We were talking about this a little bit. It's further away, because right in front of me right now, I'm laughing at the charges, and the fact that they had to go to these lengths to find charges, I guess, is a good thing. Will it be a reality? That tests my faith in Filipinos. I always, when I talk, I say I appeal to the men and women of the Philippine judiciary, of the Philippine government, because I think their values haven't changed. I think they believe in rule of law. I don't think they believe in weaponizing the law against perceived critics of the administration, certainly not against journalists. So I control my fear, or rationalize it, I guess.
So if you're accused of tax evasion, among other things, what is it actually about in your mind?
To try to stop us from doing the stories that we do. What we're trying to do is hold our government account. And it's not just our government, we're also trying to we're battling impunity on 2 fronts, I always say, right? The first is our government, the police has started a drug war that July of 2016, this is President Duterte led, that has killed, according to their own admission, 5,000 people by last year. But what they always forget to say is that there's another category called homicide cases under investigation. Under that, there's more than 30,000 people. right? So that all comes, and the people are killed. Those 5,000 cases, the people that they've killed, they're not being investigated because the government, and this is a quote, presumes regularity. When there are mothers complaining that their 5-year-old children have been killed, or their 17-year-old son has been killed and caught on CCTV, right, with being shot point blank. That's the only legal case that's been won. But the second impunity is actually against an American social media platform. In the Philippines, Facebook is king. 97% of Filipinos on the internet are on Facebook. Our internet is Facebook. And Rappler grew because of Facebook. And the problem is what happens when lies spread faster than truth. The disinformation networks that are working with the government, that are either government state-sponsored or they are government encouraged, or both.
So two things there. Just when we talk about the internet is Facebook, or Facebook is the internet, I think this is in part because the people in the Philippines largely use mobile internet. And Facebook has this policy around the world called Free Basics, where you can access Facebook without having to pay for data.
That's correct.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's called zero rating, but like in Myanmar, for example, in a lot of parts of Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Indonesia has elections. The world's largest Muslim nation, they have elections in April this year. But when you get a phone in Myanmar, it has Facebook already built in, and it is free. It's zero rated.
So what happens sometimes is that people who want to spread disinformation will create false front pages of stories. So as you scroll through the stories, you'll see the front page, but if you don't have data, you can't click to see what the story actually is, click the link, or verify it. So people tend to believe what they see.
That's correct. I think you were the first to report this part, right? Because you were talking to kids in a park.
Right.
And then I told you, yeah, that's the reason why.
So if you can help us understand, when you started reporting at Rappler, again, this young news organization, 64% women, average age 23 of the workforce, which is the average age of the Philippines, when they started reporting about what was happening in the drug war, what started happening to you?
Attacks. I think this is the newest weapon against journalists, and unfortunately, because Filipinos spend the most time online, on social media, globally. You can check this on We Are Social. In January of 2018, Filipinos spend an average of 4 hours a day online. Canadians, you're about half that. That was as of January 2018. So this is Hootsuite. You can check out that report. But we spend a lot of time on social media, so we were a petri dish for a lot of this stuff. Sorry, now I forgot the question.
What happened to you when you started telling the truth
Oh
about
my
the drug
gosh.
war?
Okay, so the first is the government started parsing the truth, the numbers, and then started attacking us for sticking to the numbers and actually keeping track of the numbers. And then they changed the numbers. If you Google number of people killed in the drug war, you will find a very small number. You'll find the 5,000. You won't find the 30,000 because what the government does is try to intimidate journalists from telling the story. Part of the reason we're targeted is because we keep the numbers moving, right? The last number that the West recognizes is from January of 2017. Human Rights Watch said 20,000 people were killed. 12,000 people were killed. 12,000, and it hasn't been updated since then.
So as they start reporting this, the attacks start coming, you get called any number of things, and you start noticing, as I understand it, that this was happening to journalists all over the Philippines.
So this
for
is on
telling the
social
truth.
media. Yeah. So so aside from the drug war, then we came out with a propaganda series. We called it, weaponization of social media, the weaponization of the internet, and this happened. We began gathering data in July of 2016. The first part of the series came out late September, early October. When that series came out, all of a sudden, overnight, I was on the computer almost all night because I was being attacked. And my initial my initial instinct as a reporter is to respond, right? And that was an exercise in futility because the attacks kept coming. And then I realized...
What were they saying?
You're elitist, your sister or your mother or someone in your family hasn't been murdered because of drugs. You should be murdered, you should be raped. Every animal that I can think of. I think 1 in every 100 comments was probably about the story, but nothing ever went to the story. These were all attacks.
And how many were happening in what time frame?
So after like 3 or 4 hours, I stopped responding because it wasn't a response back of any sort, and I just started counting. And I counted an average of 90 hate messages per hour. Not 19, 90 hate messages per hour.
And for how long did that go on?
About a month, which is, you're assuming a troll army gets paid a month. So yeah, it was shocking, and it took 2 weeks to really learn how to deal with it.
And so I think some people are still trying to deal with it. I know you have a video. You interviewed some of the journalists in the Philippines about the attacks they face.
So yeah, this isn't just, it's not just, I'm not the only person who gets this, right? It's not only Rappler. If you report from the Philippines now, especially if you're a woman, you will get attacked. If you tweet and I retweet you, you will meet some of my attackers. Andrea, when she came to the Philippines and did these stories, I think you also met some of them, right?
Yeah, I met some fascinating people online who wished me no end of creative ends. It's kind of, I learned a lot. Mocha Uson is one of the influencers in the Philippines. She's a very popular woman. She was a performer turned politician, and we had an interview, and it was Mocha versus Adrienne, it seems, online, and it got very ugly very quickly. But let's have a look at this.
Well, so this is like the network of that attacks journalists. This is the network that attacked me. It's similar network that attacked Andrea, because she walked. By the way, Mocha Uson has never given me an interview. I've asked. She gave it to Adrienne. But look at the network. These are This is a Facebook. It's a vector map. It's a social network map, right? And it's so coordinated and so systematic that they broke it down. The account that she's talking about, she's a singer-dancer who anchors the entire network. Mocha Uson blog takes care of our mass base in the Philippines. This account here takes care of the middle class, and then this account takes care of, it's a pseudo-intellectual account. Right? That's the basis of the foundation of our ecosystem, information ecosystem in the Philippines. But I want to show you how it all connects, because they jump into traditional media, because that account, the pseudo-intellectual, is a columnist for this newspaper, Manila Times, whose chairman emeritus is appointed the head of international public relations for President Duterte. And then they work with state media, and state media has already partnered with China and Russia. And you close the entire loop by making this woman that Adrienne mentioned to you, the head of social media for the presidential palace. Is that too? So in April 2017, when you interviewed her, she was heading social media for the Philippine government. She's since resigned is the right word, partly because of efforts of activists, but also partly because she is now running for Congress. Let me show you the video. These are journalists, not just from Rappler, one from a foreign news group, a foreign correspondent, a photographer. Ed Lingao works for a television network in the Philippines. And then you'll see a little thin slip of a girl. She is Rappler's reporter at the presidential palace, who stands up to President Duterte's bullying.
Ever been harassed because of your work?
Yes.
Have you been threatened online?
Ay, oo.
Have you been called biased?
Yes.
Have you been called stupid?
Yes, plenty times. By idiots.
Have you been called disrespectful?
Yes.
Have you been accused of corruption?
Yes.
Have you been called ugly as a response to any story?
Yes.
Have you been called fake news?
Oh yeah, they always say I'm fake news. Anything that's critical is fake, right?
Have you been accused of being an imperialist spy?
Yes.
Have you been accused of being a communist operative?
Yes.
Have you been accused of working for the CIA?
Yes.
Have you been sexually harassed as a journalist?
Yes.
Has your family been threatened, harassed, or alluded to?
Yes, it has. Specifically my daughter. When she died, there were a lot of people who made fun of that.
Have you been threatened with rape?
Yes.
Yes.
No, not me, but my family.
Have you been threatened with violence?
Yes.
Have you been threatened with death?
Yes.
Have you been told how you're going to be killed?
Yes.
Has the violence been described to you?
Yeah, blow my head off or bury me alive.
What will stop you from reporting?
Nothing. Nothing.
Nothing.
Death.
Did you have to kill me?
Being on the cover of Time magazine as a person of the year help you in the Philippines, or does it hurt you in a way?
It could go either way, right? Would it anger the government, which means they can come back at us more? Or will it give us a shield? Because your attention, because other democracies care about what we're going through. I came down on the side, and part of the reason I'm talking to you today is shine the light. It's what we do as journalists, and I think that even though President Duterte says he doesn't care what the international community thinks, I think he does care. And our deep ties, the Philippines' deep ties to the United States, to the West, I think those things also still matter, although, as we know, the whole world is in flux, right? And democracies all around the world are being rolled back.
Is part of what's rolling back the democracies, again, I don't mean to pick it entirely on Facebook, but I think Facebook has to explain itself. How much jeopardy have democracies been put in because of social media networks like Facebook?
I think this is the root of the problem. Part of the reason democracies have been weakened has been because of social media platforms. And, don't get me wrong, I know the power of Facebook because Rappler couldn't have existed without Facebook. And we couldn't have grown as fast as we did without Facebook. But at the same time, there's a reason why Rappler feels the worst of Facebook the most, because we're there, we live on Facebook. Now, why? Think about it like this, and I think for you with your elections coming up, you need to see how vulnerable you are. Facebook has become the largest distributor of news. You can catch CBC on Facebook, right? You can catch any news on Facebook now. And in fact, I don't know the number for Canadians, but for Americans, up to 69% of Americans get their news from Facebook. In the Philippines, you're talking like all of us, So what happens when that happens? It's the world's largest distributor of news, but they did not take the gatekeeping powers of journalists, which means they don't distinguish fact from fiction. And in fact, what happens is because it caters to the worst of human nature, these disinformation networks pound on the fracture lines of society, and lies laced with anger actually spread faster than truth. And when you spread a lie 1,000,000 times, that's the truth, right? So not only has that happened, that what we used to police the public space, the journalists are no longer there, but then you also have echo chambers. So if you're right, you're on this side, and in the past, you would still hear what the left is saying, so you could also be moderated. But now if you're a rightist, you go all the way here, and you're only talking to people like you. And because you're only talking to people like you, you move even further right. And the same with the left. It's actually tearing societies apart. What happens to the public space where democracies happen? It's gone.
There are people who will say in this country, though, but this is Canada. This isn't the Philippines. Do you think this country is armed enough, it has a protective shield around its democracy enough to not be targeted in this election, to not be vulnerable?
Absolutely not. No, you're people. And the way disinformation works is it works on the worst of human nature. What are your fears? What makes you angry? They will figure that out, and they will pound on the fracture line of society until it breaks. Why do I say that, and why do I think you could be targeted? During APEC, the only world leader who actually questioned President Duterte on human rights, there was only one, was your Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. If you stand for democratic principles, part of the disinformation network that we see on Facebook is a geopolitical power play, and it aims to weaken strong democracies built on principles. You are individual people. You have your hates and your fears, and they will play to them, and you're a multicultural society. While you're tolerant, what happens on Facebook is emotions carry it through. And I think this is something Facebook is grappling with, right? Emotions overpower our rational minds, and your own cognitive biases will fuel your anger before you have a chance to think. So be careful.
Well, be careful is excellent advice, but I feel like people want to know tangibly what you can actually do.
I think the first is understand the social media platforms and what's happened in other countries around the world. The very first report that came out about how cheap armies on social media are rolling back democracy came out as early as November 2017, and it was Freedom House. They came out with another report after that, and a year later, there's another great report, Oxford Computational Propaganda Research Project from Oxford University. And then lots more have been written about it. Take a look and know what's happened in other countries around the world. In Canada, just last December, 2 companies came out with results of data that was given by Facebook, Alphabet, for Google, for YouTube, and Twitter. They were given to the US Senate Intelligence Committee. They gave them to a company called New Knowledge to analyze. And that company came out with certain links to Canada. I think those are some of the things you should look at. You have to understand, what is the content that you're seeing? Is it real, is it not? And then, what are you sharing? That's even more potent. Because part of the problem is that all of this stuff happens in the virtual world with impunity, right? You are being manipulated with impunity. So until that changes, I don't think this will stop.
Does Facebook give a damn? Do you have a sense that Facebook cares enough to actually hunt these disinformation networks and pull them off the site?
Yes, I do, and strangely, I'm optimistic. I know it's worst, but I do see them moving, and part of it is they were rightfully pounded last year, all around the world, but last year they also took action. In January of 2017, they hired a man who was the head of counterterrorism in the Obama White House. They are now starting to treat these networks like terrorist networks, and they have started takedowns. So they've taken down Russian disinformation networks. They've taken down Iranian. They've taken down, in the Philippines, there have been 2 takedowns. And, they have their own code words. They'll say it's inauthentic coordinated activity. Inauthentic is code for you're being manipulated. It's not real. It is a bandwagon. They're astroturfing it to make you feel like you should feel like this, that there's a lot of people who feel this. I think that's a danger. The other reason they care is it's to their own self-interest that they clean this up, because they will lose us. And it's a powerful tool, right? I mean, for organizers, for community action. That's why I haven't given up on it. We're one of 2 Filipino fact-checking partners of Facebook, and we continue to fact check the lies, which is a journalist's job, and then we take apart the networks that spread the lies. And we tell our public. I think that's what we can do as journalists, is tell you about these dangers and then tell you how we're being manipulated. This is part of the reason President Duterte's government doesn't like Rappler, because we live on social media and we have the data to back this up. And the fact that Filipinos know that there's a move to manipulate them makes them harder to manipulate.
One of the interesting things about Maria, I find, is that, again, you don't just talk about these things, you talk to the people who are behind these things. So you got in the grill of Mark Zuckerberg, which is something I think all of us sort of desire and aspire to do. You told him what was happening in the Philippines. You asked him for help, and he said what?
April of 2017, remember, they were just starting to realize what was happening. They were Mark was in denial through most of 2016, right? So in April 2017 at the F8, there were a few of us who had lunch with him, and I invited him to come to the Philippines. I said, you have to come because Facebook is just so powerful there. 97% of Filipinos on the internet are on Facebook. And then he frowned at me, and I was wondering, why is he frowning? And then he said, Maria, what are the other 3% doing? We laughed. I laughed. But then I realized also that was part of the problem. They were so focused on growth that they weren't realizing their impact. And that's the difference between a technologist and a journalist. We're always so aware of impact, and you turn yourself inside out because you do your job for impact, but you want to make sure that you are doing the right thing.
In the name of doing the right thing, in order to come here meant you had to get permission from the court to travel. And it wasn't clear that you would get that permission to travel. And I know now that you're here and you have family around the world who are saying, I know it's cold, but maybe you could stay. You have American citizenship. I'm sure Canadians would be more than happy to have you here as well. Why do you stay? I mean, you face a very real risk of going to jail. Why do you stay?
I don't think I have a choice, because, so I have dual citizenship. When I turned 40, I think this is like for every third culture kid, you try to figure out where is home, right? And when I turned 40, I wanted to choose my home. And foolishly, I guess, I chose the Philippines. I decided I was going to go home, and that was when I had been with CNN for 20 years. I'd spent the last decade in Jakarta, and I decided I was coming home. So I thought I was young enough to have learned enough and to still be able to do something, but old enough to actually have a little wisdom. So I came home to head the largest network. I chose the Philippines. I chose to turn my dollars into pesos. I mean, I really did. So when we began Rappler, there was a reason why we wanted to do it, because our institutions, unlike here in Canada, our institutions were weak. And I was tired of waiting for government to do something about it. And I thought that this new technology, that Facebook, that Twitter, could actually help us build institutions bottom up, that we could use technology to jumpstart development. And we were able to do it up until 2016. So I felt like moving out, this is only a little bit of pressure. I don't think that I think if I left, it would mean that every single principle I stood for in the decades I've been a journalist, that everything I believed in, that the choice I made to commit to the Philippines, all didn't matter. And the other reason I'm staying is I'm absolutely convinced we will win this. That I don't think Filipinos have fundamentally changed. I don't think we believe killing is the right thing to do. We were one of the first signatories to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I think that there are good men and women inside the Philippine judiciary who I hope will touch our case and who I hope will stand on principles. That's our call. You know, it's important to do that call, because if everyone ducks, then your democracy is a sham.
Well, no one's ever accused you of ducking.